And welcome back, Rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and this is our Week 7 Power Rankings for the 2026 MLR season. I'll be honest, right from the get-go, this was one of the hardest weeks for the Power Rankings just because the games have been very, very competitive, and a lot of things, again, if you've never seen my Power Ranking videos before, a lot of things go into what exactly forces a team to move up or move down. Is not about just winning or losing. It matters where you play, who has the home pitch advantage, also how good a performance the team is. Remember, these are power rankings. It is not supposed to necessarily correlate with the standings overall, though in the case of certain things like the number one spot being held by a team that has been dominating the season so far, which we will talk about a little bit later on, just because my videos have been pretty short, just because there's only been 3 games per weekend at most. And it's definitely been very exciting watching the Chicago Hounds pretty dominant this season. But will that stay the whole entire season? Will they be the very first team in Major League Rugby history to finish the season undefeated? I'll explain a little bit, but just a little spoiler, I don't think that will happen, but we'll see. But again, let's go into our power rankings. We're gonna skip the obvious 2 positions, 1 and 6. We'll talk about that game when we talk about the Chicago Hounds. But let's talk about the other 4 teams involved, because that's where the 2 through 5 spot were very, very hard, and it was very contested. And also, 2, very important, because again, this season only the top 4 teams go. So the difference between the 4 and 5 spot, it's kind of like the playoffs as well. We'll see what happens there. So let's start with Legion taking on the reigning, defending, 3-time Major League Rugby champions, the New England Free Jacks, who are starting to pick up a little bit of speed. A very, very competitive game. First and foremost, not making excuses, but it does make a difference. This game was in New England at Veterans Memorial Stadium, and it was pouring rain. And being a West Coast boy myself, I don't like rain. I'll be the first to admit I'm not the biggest fan of weather that isn't sunny, and it's usually very, very sunny here in Southern California. And, I feel the Legion don't perform very well in rainy conditions, and this game proved that point. So, the game starts. New England scores first after surviving a Legion onslaught, but then Colby Min, who again has been like the MVP of the team, gets a great kick pass to Corbin Smith, who scores a try. During that try, Joe Johnson gets a yellow card, which again, we are out of nowhere just starting to see a lot of yellow cards throughout the games, and this game was no exception. Though New England gets the first one, it's probably like the only yellow card that New England gets, but it won't be the only yellow card in the match. Moments later, Jason Dom gets a yellow card for the Legion just for committing way too many penalties, and that leads to New England getting the try. It gets very back and forth due to the rain, not a lot of scoring going until the 37th minute when Tonga Kofe for the Legion, who has been really, really great as a prop for the Legion. He gets a yellow card for an elbow when he was clearing out a New England player, which results into a try by Sione Tupo for New England. That would be his second for the match of brace. Sione Tupo, another unsung hero for the New England Free Jacks. That leads to score the 17-7 at the half. Let that be known. 17-7 New England at the half. Second half, the rain is absolutely pouring. A lot of penalties committed by the Legion that allows New England to score 2 penalty kicks from Joel Hodgson, who has been phenomenal ever since joining New England. But then Legion start to score. Gonzalo Bertrano, who scores a try that gets the game a little bit more competitive. And then, unfortunately, yellow cards galore. Lopetti gets a yellow card. Alex Lopetti gets a yellow card. And then Cyril Sama, who just was signed to the Legion, literally sets foot on the pitch, gets a yellow card. Legion are playing 2 men down at one point. But fortunately, Legion defense and the rain, New England doesn't score a try. The game looked like it was going to end, but a last-minute RSS referee review system, RRS referee review system gets into effect, turns the ball over from New England to the Legion. Legion are to score a try from Ben Houston, his 5th of the season. That was the bonus try for the Legion. Legion end up walking away with a loss, 21-26. So again, the score was 17-7 at the half. Then it turns to 21-26. Legion scored 2 tries in the second half. The New England doesn't score 1 try at all. It's all penalty kicks. Legion outscored New England in the second half. And if it wasn't for not only 4 yellow cards, but also 2 in the second half, the Legion score 18. I'm sorry, the Legion commit 12 penalties after committing 5 in the first half, 12 in the second half. So really, the Legion were kind of their own worst enemy in this game, but it still was very competitive in the fact that even though the Legion were committing a lot of penalties, New England weren't able to score any tries in the second half. So it was almost a weird tale of 2 halves. But even though the Legion outscored New England, the penalties prevented the Legion from really taking advantage of it. So the Legion still come up short, 5 points less, 26-21. And because of that, and let me go into the next game between Seattle and Old Glory so that I can paint a bigger picture. But just remember, it was a very, very competitive game. Legion just falling short to New England. Let's go now to Old Glory and Seattle, 2 teams that are near the bottom as well, fighting to make some room in a very competitive playoff race. Jason Robertson, who's been phenomenal for Old Glory. I talk about these people who've been very phenomenal for their team, but they are. They've been the stars of the season. He gets an easy penalty kick within the first 2 minutes of the game. Seattle gets a penalty kick by Devon Rousseau, who has been taking over cooking duties ever since David Kutzer unfortunately suffered an injury last week, has not been able to be clear. So that's a big blow for Seattle. Will that affect them in this game? John Rizzo was able to score 2 tries for Old Glory, and Old Glory up at the half, 15-6. So Old Glory up on Seattle, 15-6 at the half. This game, by the way, is being played in Old Glory's new home, George Mason Stadium. Seattle had to go from Seattle over to DC to play. In the second half, Inufuri scores his 28th try of the season. That ties him for 9th overall in Major League Rugby history. And then Seattle gets 2 more tries, one by Michael Hand, who looks like he unfortunately pulled a hamstring in that when he scored the try. And at the 60-minute mark, Seattle gets a yellow card, but Old Glory gets not only a red card, but a yellow card as well. They're literally playing with 13 men for the rest of the game. This leads to Seattle's 4th straight try since the second half. Near the end, though, Old Glory does get a try to make it look respectable from Damian Hoyland. And Jason Robertson puts on the penalty kick at the end. So Old Glory comes within 5 after leading at the half, 15-6. They end up losing 25-30. So Legion and New England playing in New England at American Veterans Stadium in the rain. New England is up at the half. They're leading the game 17-7. And despite a yellow card, despite 4 yellow cards, despite 12 penalties in the second half, the Legion score 2 tries, prevent New England from scoring any tries, and only lose by 5. Conversely, Seattle and Old Glory. Old Glory playing at home against Seattle. Old Glory is up at the half, 15-6. Second half, Old Glory gets a red card and a yellow card, and Seattle scores 4 straight tries to win the game, 25-30. That is the dilemma that I'm facing in this little scenario. So those 4 teams, and I'm going to show you where the 4 teams were at the beginning of the power rankings. California was 2nd. New England was 5th. Whoops. Beautiful live. New England was 5th. Old Glory was 3rd. And Seattle was 4th. So, that's where the teams were going into Week 7. Because of the way, first of all, Seattle won. Can't take that away from them. So they're going to move up. Old Glory had the game won at home. And they end up giving up 4 straight tries to Seattle to win, which is impressive to win that at away, not at home. Legion losing to New England in the rain. But by the second half, California actually scores more tries than New England does. New England has no tries in the second half, despite California having 4 yellow cards and a bunch of penalties. So with all that being said, I felt Seattle had the most impressive win out of the two. So they move up to 2. I felt New England obviously winning should move up. But Old Glory losing the way they did. Second half giving up 4 straight tries to Seattle at home. Drops them down all the way to 5. California only drops down 1 spot to 3. Now I know, you're going to say, such a homer for me, I'm a California fan. I felt New England didn't play a great game. And really, California kind of were their own worst enemy, fighting the elements. But despite that, and fighting the elements, they still only lost by 5 when they were losing at the half. Seattle, losing at the half, pulls off the victory with 4 straight tries away at Old Glory. That's where I came up with what it was. Do you agree with me? Let me know in the comments. But this, I feel, is the most accurate way to assess who was the best team of the week, who had the more impressive victory, who had the more disappointing victory. Most impressive victory, most disappointing victory, pulled off kind of an impressive performance despite the loss, very disappointing loss. That's the scenario. Okay. Now, last game, let's talk about Chicago Hounds taking on Anthem Rugby Carolina. Now, Chicago has been on a tear, undefeated since the start of the season. The only team left that's undefeated. Anthem looked like world beaters at the start of the season, winning 2 matches, but has fallen quite short since then. Chicago looking like they can take on the world. Chicago also averaging 8 tries a match. In this game, Anthem was the first ones to score, though, with a try by Don Makina. Chicago strikes back from the Canadian native Matt O'Rourke, and then one from Macklin Jones. Chicago gets a penalty reversed against them for some back chat. That allows Anthem to then score a try. But then Chicago scores with another try by Macklin Jones, his second, and then 2 tries by Mark O'Keefe. That's resulting in his 30th try of the season. That puts him up tied for 7th overall in the history of Major League Rugby. Charlie gets a yellow card at the 25th minute. But despite that, they get a brace from Joel Momsen, who has been really, really great as team captain for Anthem Rugby Carolina. In the second half, that was just the first half, all right? It's all tries in this game. In the second half, Malachi Isdale, who I felt was phenomenal for Seattle, moving over to Anthem. He gets his first try of the season. That gets Anthem within 9 points. So it's a very close game. Unfortunately, Anthem gets another yellow card, which leads to the 7th try of the season for Theo Fiore, who is leading the league in tries. Like I mentioned before, in my way too early prediction, the guy who will be the hooker for the Chicago Hounds, who's taking over for Dylan the Butcher Fawcett, who just retired, he will become a try-scoring machine, and that's Theo Fiore, so he has been phenomenal. Chicago then gets 2 more tries, 9 total tries in the match, but Anthem getting 6 tries, so 15 tries overall in this game. It was a try fest. Like I said, Chicago has been phenomenal. They have not lost a game. This is the highest amount of points. They won 61-36, the most points that Chicago has ever put up in franchise history. Anthem has to give themselves some credit. This is the most points scored against Chicago so far this season. Like I mentioned before, Chicago's been averaging 7 tries a game. They'd be higher if it wasn't for the one game, the very first game they played against Anthem in week 2, where they only scored 31 points. Since then, they've been scoring at least 40 or more points, twice over 50, first time this season over 60. What can I say? Chicago has just been the world beaters of the league so far. Number one, and of course, they also have the old mate sitting in their position. Now, with that being said, who can beat Chicago? Okay. Will Chicago's looking right now with only 4 games left in the season. Chicago is looking like 5 games left in the season. Chicago is looking, 4 games. I was right the first time. Chicago is looking like they can finish the season undefeated. Now, will they do that? I'm going to talk about what's coming up for their season. Next week, they're playing against California. They have 3 of their final games away. Next week, they're playing against California. Granted, not necessarily at home in LA. It's going to be the first time that they're going to be at St. Mary's Stadium, up closer to San Francisco for the California Legion. Then they get a home match against Seattle, and then 2 away matches, one at Old Glory, the last game of the season against New England, which could be a barn burner. But let's talk about this. Chicago right now are sitting very comfortably in first place. They haven't sealed it up yet with a win next week, but I think if they win 2 games, they are pretty much guaranteed a spot as a home team in the playoffs, which means because they're also hosting the championship game, they pretty much have home field advantage the whole entire championship and playoff rounds. Now, with that being said, those 2 games are against Seattle and California. Quite possibly, the way they're playing and the way they're so high up, the win against California almost guarantees them the finish in first and second at least. Okay? Now, if that's the case, will Chicago still be up or have all their star players play in those final 3 games of the season? Will they risk that? And also, too, with that being said, the last 2 games, Old Glory and New England are right now sitting at the bottom of the rankings. They're fighting desperately to make the playoffs. They have to win every game, and quite possibly their matches in Chicago might be must-win games. Old Glory has been playing pretty good despite themselves. New England has looked like they're getting better every week, and with the announcement that I made last week that Paul Balacana is coming back, Andrew Quatrain is coming back. Some very good, strong veteran players are coming back for New England. So they're going to look a little bit more like the New England of old. The New England that have picked up the Shield 3 times straight. So, will they be more of a challenge to Chicago? Will Chicago even really try as hard? Because there is granted, it's going to be bragging rights. They'll keep the old mate if they stay undefeated this season. But that doesn't give them any much more chances of winning the championship shield if they stay undefeated. Like I said, the way that they're playing right now, they're pretty much guaranteed home field advantage throughout the playoffs. There's only 1 game, the semifinal, and then the championship game is in their stadium. They automatically host it. So, I don't think Chicago is going to finish the season undefeated. I really feel one of these 2, possibly maybe both, because they can afford losing both of those games and still finish first. So there's a possibility they lose 1 or 2 of those games. Maybe even Seattle. Seattle might beat them. So and again, not counting out California. Again, I'm a big fan. California could beat them as well. It's a possibility, but I really, really feel the further along the season, the higher chance that Chicago will drop 1 or 2 games at the end. Honestly, that's not a bad thing. I don't feel that changes anything. If you remember my way too early predictions, I felt Chicago was going to be in the championship game, quite possibly winning it all. And they look like they can win it all. Losing those games, not going to mean a thing. But will that happen? Let me know in the comments below. I think there's a good chance of that, but there's a good possibility they could maybe be undefeated going into the playoffs. I just don't think that's very likely. It will be funny to see if they do lose to either of these two teams, and these two teams, whichever team beats them, don't make the playoffs. There's a possibility the old mate will not be on play in the championship game, which will be very interesting as well. So that is our power rankings. Let's talk about the preview of next week's games next. And now let's talk about week 8 of the 2026 MLR season. Yes, week 8. We only have 4 weeks left of the regular season. The season has gone by so quickly, and yet there's still plenty to play for. Technically, no playoff spots have been clinched yet. If I'm doing my math, I think Chicago still has not yet clinched a spot, even with a win here. They still have to technically win one more game after this, but well, it's practically 3 teams fighting for the last 4th place spot. So plenty to play for. We'll start Saturday, May 16th, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We have the Chicago Hounds, owners of the Old Mate, taking on the California Legion. This game will be played at St. Mary's Stadium. If you don't know, St. Mary's of California is a prestigious rugby powerhouse in the college rankings. St. Mary's of California has won many championships, especially at the 15s level. A couple of California Legion players are former St. Mary's alum, including Chase Jones and Ronan Murphy. Ronan Murphy is a Rudy Schultz nominee during his time with St. Mary's of California. So very strong history of rugby in that area. This is a rematch of week 2, Chicago's first game of the season, losing to week 3, losing to beating California 48-24. Again, Chicago has been looking really hot. As I mentioned in my first half of this video, I think California is a very strong team. I think California has a bunch of discipline issues that has cost them. That's what cost them in the match against Chicago. Granted, also, too, they don't always travel very well. This match, more at home. Home-based field is important. And, it's a possibility that California can win this one. I just think Chicago is looking very prime, and I don't think they're going to let up anytime soon until, more than likely, they have that number 1 seed spot secured for them. So this will be a very tough challenge for the California Legion. Sunday, May 17th, is, of course, our doubleheader. Again, you can watch all these games live or on demand on ESPN+. First game of the day, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Anthem Rugby Carolina taking on the Seattle Seawolves. This is a rematch from week 3 as well, where Anthem got a win over Seattle 34-25. In this rivalry, Seattle's won 3, Anthem won the prior one. Again, I feel both teams have kind of been moving in the opposite direction, though. Anthem not doing so well after the wins over Seattle and the Legion. Seattle has started to find a little bit more form. Again, both teams desperate to win this one because they need to try to secure their playoff spot. This is going to be at Starfire Stadium, which we all know a very tough place to beat Seattle. Again, it was great to see Anthem start to look like a team that can win a lot of games. I just think it's starting to feel like all the other teams are not taking Anthem lightly, and that means they're really showing up to play. Seattle, I feel, will show up to play. They don't want to lose the Anthem at home. Seattle, I think, walks away with this one. And now the really interesting game. And surprisingly, considering both these teams are at the bottom of the standing, this is your Sunday night rugby game, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. New England Free Jacks taking on Old Glory DC. A very intense rivalry. I always think that Old Glory plays New England much tougher than any other team. I feel this is a brother-sister, older brother, younger brother rivalry where it doesn't matter how the rest of the season goes. Old Glory wants to win these games just to prove a point. In this rivalry, New England has won 8 games, including 2 playoff games. Old Glory, though, has won 5, and they've won the last 3. including earlier this season in Week 3 when Old Glory won a squeaker of a game 21-19 at American Legion Stadium. This one is being played now at their new home, George Mason Stadium. Will Old Glory win this one? It's gonna be close because both teams desperately need a win. Nobody's out of the playoffs yet, and neither of these teams will be mathematically eliminated yet, but they are going to be very, very close to losing an opportunity to be in the playoffs if they lose this game. So this is really a must-win for both sides. And yeah, it's going to be fun, despite the fact, again, that these are two teams that are sitting at the bottom. Because, again, every match with this truncated season being only 10 weeks, with only 4 games left in the regular season, every win is going to matter. So that is our preview. Again, thank you very much, as always, for watching my videos. I appreciate the support, and I'll see you on the pitch.